Hi, this is Devin Foley, host of First Tuesday Conservatives Countdown to the Election, co-hosted by Alpha News and Charlemagne Institute, of which I am the CEO. Charlemagne publishes Intellectual Takeout and Chronicles Magazine. Today, I am really honored to be able to speak with Alice Marie Johnson, who was pardoned by President Trump after spending what must have seemed like a lifetime in prison, and who is now taking all of her experience and her love of God and turning that to criminal justice reform. And again, I'm just very excited and very touched that I can even be able to be in this conversation with you, Alice. If you'd
Thank
like
you.
to open it up, give us a little bit of background as far as what life was like and what led to the fateful decision that ended up putting you in prison for a long time.
But first of all, thank you for having me on tonight. And it is always an honor to stand before, to speak. I'm not standing right now, but just to speak to the children of God and to speak to those who believe in redemption. My story is truly a miraculous story. It's a story of redemption. It is a story of grace and the mighty hand of God intervening in a situation that seemed hopeless. I grew up in, I guess, a very traditional African American family. Both my parents were Christians. I was born and raised in Mississippi in a small town. I grew up in a small town called Olive Branch, Mississippi. And church was a part of our life. You didn't get an option. You didn't get up and say, I don't feel like going today.
Yeah.
We just knew we were going to church, we're going to Sunday school, and my father loved reading the word.
Oh, that's
And
beautiful. That's
yes, and he
a
would
bit
have
like
me
my
read to him.
house.
Yeah,
You guys know what you're doing tomorrow morning. It's Sunday.
it's Sunday.
Now
Don't
get to
just think
bed.
about it. You're not
Exactly.
asked. But at the age of 14, I was born in 1955. I want to just back up a little bit in Mississippi. So, that was still in a very turbulent time.
It was.
Uh,
And which part of Mississippi is Olive Branch in
it's
for?
in North Mississippi.
North
It's
Mississippi?
right outside of Memphis.
Ah, I've been,
But it could have been another whole city. I mean, another whole planet almost, because I grew up in a country setting and Memphis was the city life.
oh yeah. Well, was that close to the Delta then, as far as the country and all of that, or is that further, you were further
It's
north?
further north.
Okay,
We're at more of the northern tip of Mississippi.
got
I
it.
mean, you cross 10 minutes, you were into Memphis.
Got it. I've driven through that area, so I can picture it in my
Beautiful
mind.
area.
It
Beautiful
is. It
area.
is.
Yes, so I never wanted to be a city girl, but I ended up being one, getting in trouble.
It
Uh,
happens to the best of us.
yes. But at the age of 14, I walked away from the church, some things that I saw. But, looking back on it, that was the exact place that the enemy wanted me in, was walking away from that covering because there was safety there. But when I
Hmm.
walked away from it, it was a turbulent, coming into the turbulent 70s. Um, and when I walked away, he was waiting for me. I wanted to be out there and have fun like the rest of the girls were having. I became a teenage mother. At 15, I found myself pregnant and married
Wow.
because back then you just don't walk around and shame your family.
Right.
So pretty quickly I was married, a very turbulent marriage that produced 5 children. Me and my husband had 5 children together. But during that time, my mother always believed in education. All of my sisters and my brother, they're all college educated. And I had that passion too. I was considered very smart in school. And I graduated still on time, even though during that time I had another child. So I had 2 children and still managed to graduate at 17 because I studied hard and I just was not going to be left behind.
That's amazing, actually. I mean, that's a tough thing to do.
It was very hard, but
Yeah.
coming from a family, I had the support of my parents helping me to get through school. And every job that I had, David, I always excel. I'd start at one position and I'd always excel up. I could type very fast, over 90 words a minute. And so even if I started in a secretarial position, I'd advance quickly. I had good work ethics because my parents, you just didn't have good work ethics. When the sun came up, we were working.
Yep.
So I had a career with FedEx,
Okay.
a 10-year career. Um, my marriage fell apart after 19 years. I found myself a single mother. And then I've never experienced life, and life looked exciting on the other side.
Mm,
I started going to casinos and dog tracks, and I met someone, and I was gambling, and I'm seeing the bright lights. And that's really how you get very much deceived by what looks bright and shiny.
yep.
And
Not all
I
that glitters is gold.
it's not gold. I knew nothing about a gambling habit, but I developed a gambling habit. And that gambling habit literally cost me my job.
Okay.
Of 10 years, I was a manager with FedEx. I'd excelled. I was a manager in computer ops, customer support, and I even started training others to be managers. So that losing my job, and at the same time, I can't find my husband. I have zero support. The bills are closing in on me. I'm not making any excuses for the poor decision that I made.
No,
At
I
that time,
was I was raised by a single mom who cleaned houses, even up until actually even while I was in college, she was still cleaning houses. So
yes, it was
I know that
that
pressure
pressure.
cooker.
That
Oh,
pressure. I was in a pressure cooker.
absolutely,
I had
absolutely.
a child in college, two that were going to be going pretty soon, and I just made a bad decision. I had bill collectors just crazy. My house was being foreclosed on. I had to file for bankruptcy, and then an offer came to be what is called a telephone mule. In
Hmm.
essence, what that meant was that I passed the telephone messages. I would, that's because in that business, they want to make sure they have what you call, I'm going to just call a big dummy because that's what I was. Because I had all of the telephone records. And
Oh,
during this time also, my youngest son was killed in a terrible motor scooter accident.
oh,
My son that was 14 and my youngest son was 12. They were
I'm so
driving in the
sorry.
neighborhood. Yeah, it was awful. And that added more to the pressure and the craziness of my life because I don't even have insurance. And so I couldn't even really bury my son. So I continued in this craziness. I'm trying to get off of this crazy wheel that I've got myself in, this crazy mess that I'm in. But the bottom fell out. Some people got caught, arrested, and because I had the telephone records, me who don't know anything about drugs now is called their boss.
Oh,
I didn't know I didn't know about the system of cooperation and making deals. So my lawyer, they offered me 3 to 5 years in prison, and my lawyer said, "Don't take it, Alice. Do not take it. You don't have any money. You don't have any drugs. Where's the beef? We have a good case, but I didn't know about conspiracy, that you're held accountable for everything everyone has done in the conspiracy. So while the others who had long prison records made deals, I went to trial. And after a 6-week trial, I was found guilty of attempted possession, not possession. And I was sentenced to life plus 25 years in prison.
how did that? I mean, I just realized I was at the dealership to drop off my car to get some work on it, and I'm over by 400 miles of the warranty, and my stomach dropped, and it was like, oh, but how in that moment, I mean, did the world just spin for you? Were you prepared for that, or did it just hit
No,
you like
no,
a Mack truck?
it was like well, actually, when I was found guilty, it was on Halloween. And I'll never forget the agents in my ear saying, "Trick or treat, trick or treat, trick or treat." And I could hear my elderly parents just sobbing. My father, who was a strong man of faith, They used to say that my father could pray until heaven got the news, but he couldn't pray me out of that terrible situation. But I didn't even know that a life sentence was even on the table. Had I known going into that I could possibly face even anything that had alphabets and not numbers, it would have scared me to death, and I would have taken that plea.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, yeah. So when I was in the county jail, and it was in the county jail before my sentencing, because I had already returned to my faith even before then. But I asked God to just help me in this situation, that if there was purpose in this, if he could use me, to use me for his glory, to help me to make it through, still not knowing that I was going to be sentenced to life. When I went for my sentencing, Devin, I'll never forget, I went praying. When I was working at FedEx, one of my employees told me, she said, Miss Alice, people always would call me Miss Alice. She said, whatever you do, go praying. So I went praying the 23rd Psalm. And I remember just praying, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. By this time, I knew that life was on the table, and I couldn't turn the table. I couldn't turn anything around. And so when the gavel came down, and I still thought up until the very end that somehow it was not going to be life, because I could not see myself never having been in trouble before, never having anything. I had a completely clear record, no run-ins, good family, was considered a pretty upstanding citizen before all of this happened. Working in the church, doing things in my community, that I would be looking down the barrel of a life plus 25-year sentence. But I found out when I went to prison about this thing called the crime bill that put mandatory minimums in place, that did that so many others that I would find in prison were doing long, long sentences due to that crime bill. Uh,
And that crime
and
bill had different punishments too, right?
yes, it did.
Yeah, so that, if I recall correctly, a small sum, the
It
disparity
was a it
there
was a very
between
it was a very
crack
big
cocaine and
disparity.
powdered
But
cocaine.
yeah,
Yeah.
but even when I was in prison, because when the indictment came down, there was no, it was all vague.
Mm,
I was found guilty of one portion of attempted possession, but because of the way the laws were written at that time, you could have these estimated amounts that were outrageous to get a longer sentence. And that's what happened to me. I was found guilty of a smaller amount, but they estimated the relevant conduct. When the laws changed, that you had to have, you couldn't just say, reach and grab a number out of the sky and say, this is the amount. You had to actually have an amount that was proven by the jury. But because when the laws changed, they weren't retroactive, so that they didn't impact me. So
mm,
I was still in prison under laws that had changed years ago, but I could not take advantage of them. But it was truly, I can tell you that my time in prison was a journey for me. It was there that God showed me my purpose, and that purpose was to find was His lost sheep, because He said that there are many who are not of this fold that I've got to go bring in. And so he uses whatever the situation. God didn't put me in prison, but the Lord used my time in prison to bring others to him. And really looking around at the pain and the just dejectedness and the hopelessness of the women who was there really energized me to do something to make a difference. So I started writing plays, faith-based plays. I even wrote comical plays. I did a Muddia Goes to Carswell and a Sister Act 3 to lift up their spirits. But most of the plays that I wrote were faith-based. And I found that women, when they saw that someone believed they could do something, because many of them had never heard applause before, had never had anyone tell them that they had any worth or value,
really?
prison culture started changing. It started changing. And I had a motto there that people knew. I'd always tell them that if you can do good, do it. because I believe that everyone had the ability to do good. So I really started changing culture there. I became a hospice volunteer because I found that women were on the floor and I'm sorry,
Oh,
women were on the floor and they were in hospice care. They were dying. And so I didn't want them to die alone because in my paperwork, it said that I'm going to die in prison.
right.
So I became a volunteer, and so many women, I prayed with them as they took their last breath. I became a suicide companion to just work with women to try to give them hope. I did so many things in prison, and I started writing for outside women's conferences from prison. And a lot of the women didn't even know I was doing that. I became known as a woman who was in prison, who was writing them encouragement. I had fan mail. I'm not going to call it fan mail, but I had women who were free that were writing to me, a prisoner, asking me to pray for them, telling me their problems. And I became an ordained minister in prison, not because I was really seeking a title, but it came to me. Um, I took pastoral counseling so that my job as a clerk in the chapel, I would be able to really counsel with the women when the chaplains were too busy. And my ministry work began inside of prison. And ministry for me, everyone, all of us as believers are called as ministers of the gospel.
And the Great
And so,
Commission.
yeah, we are all commissioned. So I was just fulfilling what the Lord had commanded me to do, and that was to spread the gospel. And
Uh,
he said that if I be lifted up, I will draw all men and women unto myself. And so I just lived life. I remember telling my sister that when they set me free, that they set a free woman free because I found my freedom in prison.
that's
And
beautiful.
yes, I started speaking on different platforms. I had so much favor. I was like Joseph in prison. I had favor with the staff, favor with the keeper of the prison, the warden, favor with the captain, favor because they all many times when there was trouble, they would call me in to try to talk to the women. And the women respected my voice, talking to them and calming them down. And so I started speaking at different universities from prison, to Yale University, to New York University, to the University of Washington in Seattle. So my image was out, my voice was out while I'm still in prison. So
That's
people
incredible.
learned of me. And the last thing I did before I was set free, doing any type of video conferencing, I did a video op-ed that went viral. And Devin, I didn't know what any technology words were because when I went to prison, there was no internet.
Right.
I didn't know any of the tech terms. And so when they told me, Miss Alice, that video is going viral, I was scared to death. I thought I had introduced a virus into the internet because that's what
Of
viral.
course.
I
Yeah.
mean, it may sound funny to others, but it is the truth. And the second day, the first day, someone sent it to Kim Kardashian and she saw it and she tweeted out, "This is so unfair." Well, she had her attorney, Sean Hawley, to try to track me down in prison. And when she did, she told me, she said that a very famous, wealthy woman wants to hire me because that was her personal attorney. And she said, to help you come get out of prison, would you like that? Of course, I said, let me think about it. Yes.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful.
Yes. And I didn't even know who Kim Kardashian was. I
Well,
had my
why would
daughter.
you? Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I had my daughter Google Sean Holly's clients to tell me who her clients were. And I just knew that it was Kris Jenner. I said, I got it. It's Kris Jenner for sure. And my daughter said, what if it's Kim Kardashian? And I said, Kim who? And so it ended up being Kim Kardashian. And she took my case on and fought for me like a warrior woman. I even call her my war angel to this day because she didn't stop fighting. She brought in 4 lawyers, including Sean Hawley. I had a lawyer, but she wanted fresh eyes on my case.
Yep.
So for 7 months, they brought in Jared Kushner. She contacted Ivanka, who she knew, to tell her about my case. And Ivanka told Jared Kushner, and they all called themselves Team Alice, because once they pull back the layers of my case, you can read anything. But when you get and you pull back the layers, and not from what I say, but what they put their eyes upon, Jared and Ivanka became also part of Team Alice and were fighting for my freedom. Kim Kardashian got an audience with the president on my birthday, and they showed him my case, and he really couldn't believe it. He said, "So this woman has been in prison for over 20 years for this," and he let her know that they were going to bring me home, but I didn't know it, and but she didn't tell me. He said that. And 7 days later, on June 6, 2018, as I said, the world watched as I ran across that road into the arms of my family who were waiting upon me. And I immediately, I want to tell you about the day that I left prison.
This is beautiful. All of
I,
this.
the
Unbelievable.
day, it is the
I
day
mean,
that
it's
I left.
believable if
It happened. It is
if
the
you believe
truth.
in Providence and you know
It
that these
Yes,
surprises are
yes,
out
because
there.
look, I had also, before that video, I had spoken at these other universities. Any of that could have gone viral,
Oh yeah.
but this was the last chance, and it went viral. The Lord put His super behind my natural and gave me a supernatural miracle. And when I came out of that prison that day, when they called my name over that loudspeaker, I when I actually, it was a Wednesday, and it's really kind of funny because it was all over the news that it might happen. But I'd had so many false alarms about freedom, so many disappointments, because I fought the whole time for my freedom, that when they told me that they were saying stuff on the news, I went in my room, shut the door, looked out of the window, and decided I'm not going to miss hamburger day, because we only had hamburgers once a week on Wednesday.
Awesome.
So I went to the dining hall, and before I could swallow the bite that I took, they called my name over the intercom, and Kim Kardashian was the one who told me that I was going home, that I was out of there. You could hear the women screaming, screaming, beating on the walls. And when they called my name over that intercom to report to R&D, it sounded like an earthquake. The women were screaming because they locked the compound down. They were beating on the bars. They were crying, celebrating that Miss Alice was going home, because many of them called me Mama Alice, grandmama,
Mm,
auntie, sister, because women, we don't have gangs. We have families. Women develop, they are nurturers. And
right.
so they're like families in there. So this was my prison family, and they're crying, they're stomping, they're in the window screaming, throwing kisses, saying, "Please don't forget about us." And when I ran across that road to my family, I couldn't forget about them. I went to bed that night with them on my mind, and also just thinking about the people who had been left behind. So I immediately jumped into the fight and started advocating for their freedom. And in fact, it was my case that the president, when he was when he was endorsing the First Step Act, he spoke of not in wanting sentencing reform. Even in history now, the timeline for the successful passage of the First Step Act, my release from prison, is on that timeline, because I put a face. I put a face. I put a real person on the need for criminal justice reform. I was a mother, a grandmother, and a great grandmother who had made a mistake, who had fully rehabilitated, and who was just not the image of who you thought of when you thought of someone serving a life sentence. It was just unbelievable. And so many others started in this fight. And then the president took it up. He took criminal justice reform. He said, this has to change, because these are families. He saw my family. He saw me as a human being. He saw the impact that these laws had had. And thus, the First Step Act, he pushed it through. He brought in bipartisan support by him endorsing it. Many others start looking at it. And so he did something incredible. We had not had meaningful criminal justice reform in 30 years. So this bill was that's part of his legacy. This was
Oh
a
yeah.
really big deal.
Well,
And
and
it's really a story of redemption, that people are not just worthless junk, they're not disposable. That as our faith is all about us needing a savior, needing redemption, needing grace. So
and
we
made in
want
the image of God
we're
and
made in the
dignity.
image of God,
Exactly.
and so criminal justice reform is something that, as a Christian, as Christians, that should be something that concerns all of us, because that's our redemption story too. We didn't deserve what we got. We didn't deserve that grace. We got something that we absolutely did not deserve as sinners. So I continue in my fight, and this year I launched my own foundation called Taking Action for Good. In fact, you
Taking
can look
action
at
for
it,
good.
Taking Action for Good, because remember I said that in prison, I told people that if you can do good, do it.
Yep.
I had a belief that anyone could do good, that you could take, but don't just talk about it, take action. So my focus there is not only criminal justice reform and clemencies, but also reentry. When people come home, you want to make sure that they are set up for success. So having been there myself, I help them get their freedom legs. And education is also very important to me. When I went to prison, I left behind 4 children. So I want to be able to. My oldest daughter had just graduated from college, and it was a long journey. My youngest son ended up dropping out of high school because he didn't have any parental guidance. And I want to be able to give scholarships to children of incarcerated parents. So they're not like my children. Their parent is gone and they have no hope of furthering their education if they have the grace and the desire to do it. So I've been able to successfully help 3 mothers who I was in prison gain their freedom through advocating for them and bringing their cases before the White House. So I continue in this very, very important work of identifying and, just helping as other advocates are doing. I'm totally committed to the work that I do, to making a difference, not only in their lives, but in the lives of their families. Because when you change one, you impact a generation.
Amen. Absolutely. And I want to jump into, the what's needed, how to help, all of that. But I'm also just struck by this. You would not have been watching the, elections and things of this nature and all the political sniping that goes on. But I'm guessing that a whole lot of people would really be surprised by President Trump and his moves, as far as taking this stand. It would have been the least expected person to do it. Your interactions and things like that, was it genuine? Was it a legitimate, what, this is something wrong, we've got to drive forward and fix this?
You know, I think that people who are shocked by his actions are people who don't know the president.
Mm,
When you know someone, I'm not going to say I know everything about the president, but I've had a lot of interaction with him. And when we talk, even though he sits in his highest office in the nation, I speak to a man. I talk to a man who listens, who asks questions, who is genuinely concerned. This is what I have found the president to be. And the people who really that I've talked to who know the president have found him to be this same person. I know that he loves his country and he has compassion. He's a family man. I think my family really moved him when he
mm,
saw me. My family, I know it moved him to the point that he wanted to put it in a Super Bowl commercial. Uh, uh, because it made him. Ivanka has told me about that day that the president was watching me reunited with his family, with my family. I'm saying his family,
yeah.
with my family. The day he saw me reunited and leave that prison, and that really made him want to do more. And I, I just don't see any of this that other people speak of, and even the people who say, "Well, he's just trying to get the black vote." Um, Look, he had nothing to gain. He took a risk. His own staff were saying, "Don't do it," because
Really?
they were some of his own staff, not all of his staff, but some of his key people on his staff. They made public statements about it, that they did not want him to sign to set me free. But he dismissed. That's what I like about him. He makes his own decisions. He had looked at my case, and then some say, well, it was a celebrity. A celebrity may have brought it to him, but I had to be a worthy candidate. He was not about to just set me free and I was some type of risk to society, a crazy person. He looked at my records. My warden had wrote a beautiful letter on my behalf for my freedom. My captain had wrote a wonderful letter. My case manager, my employer, look, even the women who I was incarcerated with were writing letters asking for my freedom. So when people say things like that, they don't know the whole story. They just see one part of it, a celebrity. They don't see that I was a person who was deserving and worthy of a second chance, who had spent, I left prison with a 100% clear record after 21 years in prison, almost 22.
It's
And so
incredible.
that's not the easiest thing to do. And I had
No,
so
no.
much in my files that were good from staff.
Oh, that's beautiful. Uh, when we look at the present situation, you spoke a lot about family and the importance of it. I'm believer in the not only the importance of family, but that it is, the foundation of society. And my heart goes out to so many kids in the urban environment where you have these very, very high out of wedlock birth rates, broken families, the struggle, and a lot of single moms out there trying to make it.
Yes.
All of that trouble, again, I grew up in that kind of environment. It wasn't, we were in the country, so I was in mobile homes, but I know how hard that is.
Mm-hmm.
Where do we start with uh, the challenge before us? It seems that we need to at once do criminal reform, but also really help families be strong and pretty.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It starts with the family. The family, when the family structure is weak, our society is weakened. We need one things that I've been seeing is these opportunity zones where
Hmm.
people are reinvesting in communities, because when you invest in communities, you are investing in people. And that is our strongest commodity in the United States is its people. So it has to start also with schools, with children having the opportunity for good schools to attend good schools. And just, we can't drop them. So many have been left behind. And that's a tragedy too, to see what is happening in schools with children who are literally left behind. They go from the schoolhouse to the jailhouse. It's like a pipeline. And so it has to get started in the schools to change it, because you can't just go, you want to stop it before it happens. You
Right.
don't want, I would love for criminal justice reform to not even be needed, because it's really going to start with the children, with them having a different path and different opportunities in life. And looking at, I'm going to say, our criminal justice system, we have to look at, are we really focused just on the punitive end of it?
Hmm.
Or are we looking more at the rehabilitative part of prisons? Over 90% of the people who are in prison are one day going to return home. They're going to be your neighbors. They're going to be in the supermarkets. They're going to re-enter society. So it is beneficial that we would want them to be a success.
Absolutely. Yes. And so, from looking at family, education, what do we need to do there? I mean, culture plays such an important role in it, but government also has a role in things in that area. Do
Mhm.
you see specific policies or issues that need to be discussed and confronted or pushed forward, to be able to start rebuilding family and strong schools.
Well, it's really and truly going to be, as I say, it starts in the family,
Okay.
and the schools are so important, because if you can stop a child from getting into that juvenile pipeline, and even the way that we administer juvenile justice, um, so many juveniles, our foster care system plays a role in this also. So many of the women who I was incarcerated with, a high percentage were the result of foster care, a broken foster care system. There's, you can sometimes look at this whole problem and think it's overwhelming. I'm a person, not just an optimist, but I'm a person who believes in we can't do all of it. Every one of us is not called to do everything. So I
Absolutely.
don't try to do everything. I do my piece that I know is part of my mission. But if each one of us look at what we can do, I mean, we can truly make a difference. When I was in prison, Evan, I was told how hopeless and how dark it was. And it's only dark if you see it from a dark place. It's not a good place. But instead of me getting busy with the business of dying, because I was essentially given an unexecuted sentence of death, I got busy with the business of living and trying to see what I could personally do to make a difference in my environment. And I think even in this dark time where we are experiencing COVID, it's still caused a lot of depression. But I've also seen people that have become more creative. I think as Americans, that's one of our strongest strengths, is our
Absolutely.
ability to innovate. Our
Absolutely. We are
ability to
good at that.
innovate. We are good at that. We're good at, well, they say when the going gets tough, I get tough.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's my faith in us as a nation, is that we are going to rise above any darkness that is around us, because as long as there's even a pinpoint of light in the room, it's no longer called a dark room. It's called the room that has a little light in it.
And it's amazing how bright just a little light can be in the darkness too.
Yes, yes.
It,
There's opportunities. I don't call them obstacles. I call
Mhm.
them opportunities for all of us to make a difference, for all of us to take action, not just talk about it. It's so easy to sit around and gripe and complain about how terrible things are. But when we become people of action, we can change it. We can flip this whole thing, really. We have the ability to. But I've seen one thing: so many people have been silenced and
Mhm.
afraid to speak because they don't want to be canceled by culture or demonized, or spoken harshly of. And I don't care anything about any of that. I was counseled by society for over 2 decades, so counsel me. I'm not trying to. I'm not trying to get more followers. I'm not trying to get someone to click the like button. I
Right.
just want, look. I just want the Lord to say, "Well done."
Yeah,
Anyone
amen
else,
to
what they
that.
think about, as long as I'm walking in integrity and doing what I know is right to do, I'm okay. I can sleep at night. I don't worry about who's talking about me on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or anywhere else, or who wants to talk about why in the world are you doing the things that you're doing. I don't care anything, because I care about the people. I care about the people. That is my focus. And the people are the ones who matter.
Absolutely. When you're speaking about foster homes and things of this nature, it seems, we need strong moms, but we need
Yes.
strong dads too. What can we do on, as a culture and a society? It just strikes me that we need to do a much, much, much better job of uplifting fathers, and that,
Yes, we do.
that protective role that they fill, and providing, peace to the kids, and the protection and the love, and the example and everything else that they need.
It's so necessary. People just don't, if they didn't have a father in their home, they don't just automatically know how to be a father.
Mm-hmm.
I love it when I see men mentoring other men, men teaching other men helping other men and showing them and not being afraid to speak up, not being afraid to reach out across that aisle that you might not normally reach across, and getting involved in things. People are afraid. They're more in their homes now. I know we have COVID right now, but even before then, I think, the internet can be very, very good, and it can be very, very evil.
Mm-hmm.
That's just like anything else. Um, you can use a weapon to protect, a weapon to kill. It all depends on whose hand it is in. It's not the weapon that's evil, it's the intent of the person that's wielding the weapon.
Mm-hmm.
So, we have the opportunity to be life changers, to use even the internet for good. Because the internet, really, had it not been for the internet, I wouldn't be sitting here today.
It's true. No,
It is,
there.
because it
No, it
makes a
really
big
is.
difference.
It's a
It makes a
whole
big
different
difference.
world we live in where we can
Uh-huh.
learn about each other and the plights of an individual like yourself, Alice, and then be able to actually do something. The flip side, of course, is that nastiness and viciousness can spread, and all manner of vice can spread really quickly too. I do appreciate. I like that as far as men. Folks listening to this. Would you recommend men who did their tour of duty raising their kids and going and doing Big Brother type uh, organizations and others to be able to play that fatherly role or help young fathers and guide them? It just seems at least one step that an individual could take against the mountain of troubles that we're facing.
It don't even have to be an organization. It might be a coworker that you
Mm.
might see, that you just walk past and you know that they're a new father. Sometimes it's become that we are afraid to reach out to someone else, not just the person in your church. It could be the person on your job, or just even words, just words of encouragement. I hate this whole thing of trying to take the identity away from men.
Mm.
Uh, that children need, they need that. They need that. A lot of women who I saw in prison, I go back to that, who didn't have fathers, who didn't have a male, strong male figure. Many of them, in the bad relationships that they got entangled in, that landed so many of them in prison, were really looking for a lack. They had a lack of that male relationship that validated them as a woman, really. That's what fathers do. They validate the girls. You're not looking for someone else to tell you that, as a young woman, how to not only conduct yourself, but to have a man who has nothing other than the love of Christ in their heart for you, to say, I love you, you're important, you're beautiful, you're special. And so the first person that tells them those things, they'll do anything for them.
It's terrible. I mean, I grew up, my parents divorced when I was a toddler, and then my father died when I was a kid. And I know that sense. And, even from a young man's perspective, and I was an only child, so it's worsened in some ways, but you were always aware that you're kind of on your own in this odd sense, and it's you against the world, and I don't think that that's the healthiest thing out there.
No.
As you point out, it's we're people. The family has been the way that people have done it for thousands and thousands of years,
Yes,
and there's something to that. There
it
there
is.
there are real
I am a
needs.
strong believer in family. I'm a strong believer in family. when the family structure is this broken up, when the family structure and you're told that the family structure is not important, the family is extremely important. That is where we learn our interactions with others, and that is where we get our sense, also our sense of value from our families. I don't blame it on my family. I came from a very good family. I don't blame it on the family, the choices that I made, but it was also my foundation in my family that took me through prison,
Hmm.
that made me not just give up, that made the values that were instilled in me. I didn't learn those values in prison. I learned those values at home. And like the words say, train up a child in the way that they should go. And even though I strayed away from it, I came back. That was my foundation. You
Well, a
have a
lot of us.
strong, yes, you have a strong foundation. And some things may on the surface of the foundation may get broken. But when that foundation is strong, you can stand.
It's just gorgeous, Alice, and so true. When I couldn't say any more or any better than you as far as the role of fathers. But then on the other side, what can we do for reform of the prison system? I know that one of the tough things is that once you come out of the prison, that you've got a record, and that makes it difficult to get a job,
Very
to be able to
difficult.
get on your feet. All of these things. What do you see as ways to help people re-enter society, if you will?
Well, a very important thing. There are so many collateral consequences of having a criminal record. Uh, that job, being able to get a good job, that is why so many return back.
Hmm.
And one thing I've been very, very happy with that I've been seeing is so many employers are willing to give ex-offenders a second chance. I'm not saying that you should hire everyone that comes out of prison. They might not be a fit for your company, but giving ex-offenders a second chance by giving them a chance to work, because economic the economics play a role in prisons. I've never heard a person say anything except, when I get out of prison, I want to get a good job and take care of my family. But then they find that they were locked in and now they're locked out of
Hmm.
opportunities to work. So I would really encourage business owners to look at giving people an opportunity to work for your companies, to see if you can find one that is a match for you. Um, and and also our churches play a big role in that. We have a responsibility too. When people are coming home from prison, when they have an opportunity to connect with a good church family and not feel that being ostracized, that makes a tremendous difference to their reintegration back into society. Um, just looking at to the needs of what you have. You can't, as I said, you can't do everything. You can't take on every cause. Uh, but I would encourage people too who have that gift of encouragement too, to maybe even get involved in prison ministry and help that person from. I saw people that never got visits, and I saw people from church groups who would sign up and say, I want to visit a prisoner, or I want to write and encourage a prisoner.
So you had, and I imagine that this is very, you know, I don't know how often it happens, but it just strikes me. I mean, what a terrible situation to find yourself in prison and to never have anyone visit you, to never
Yeah,
feel loved, and cared for. I think, I hadn't actually even thought about that before, but to your point, and for those listening, get involved, definitely. I mean, just you imagine that. That's a difficult thing.
Get off the sidelines.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. Oh, that's beautiful. Well, Alice, thank you so much for your time. This was just beautiful. So thank you. And I
Oh,
think
thank you for having me here.
no, I mean, truly, thank you. And we are so happy that God blessed you and is using you in ways that still aren't done. And I do hope once the election campaign and the viciousness and everything that's going on right now, that we as a country can take a breath and actually turn back to family, turn back to our faith. Remember that man is a spiritual creature and that kids need their parents and we need good, strong families. So
Yeah,
we'll do our best on our end. And I know, Alice, that you won't stop with your work.
I won't stop. Please keep me in your prayers as I continue in this fight to to continue to be used by God and to be an agent of change.
Absolutely. No, that's well, God bless you, Alice.
God bless you too.
And thank you to everyone who joined us tonight or will be joining us in the future, as this is a podcast. This has been First Tuesday Conservatives Countdown to the Election. Scott Ninsel is in the background and deserves some recognition. He's been doing a lot of hard work to be able to make these possible and to be able to run the switchboard, if you will, of Zoom. And it's also co-hosted by Alpha News and then Charlemagne Institute. We publish Intellectual Takeout and Chronicles Magazine. If you enjoy discussions like this one and the ones that we've been having and getting into a lot of these issues of family and politics and life and faith and all of it, feel free to join us. $5 a month and you get a 12-month subscription to Chronicles and a whole lot else. So thank you so much. Tomorrow at noon, we have Terry Beatley, who is a pro-life speaker and author. And then at 6:30, we have Matt Schlapp and Ian Walters discussing American Conservative Union, CPAC, and other activities. Well, Alice, thank you again for your time. This has just been a real treat and a real honor. Thank you.
Well, thank you again for having me. And I forgot one thing. I have a book out called Afterlife: My Journey from Incarceration to Freedom. And it is truly a story of not incarceration, but a faith journey.
That's beautiful. Everybody go by Afterlife. If it's even 1/10 of how powerful this conversation has been, you will not regret it. So thank you, Alice.
Thank you.